Welcome to Basic Control, baby. Today we're gonna get in your minds. We're gonna get in real deep.
Welcome to Basic Control, the show where we effectively break down various forms of media into relatable context, basically giving control back to the viewers. My name is Aaron Gray, aka the Boss Rayden on social media. Feel free to follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and ArtStation. As for my co-host, where can people find you, Adrian?
At the signs with a Y.
Alright, Eli.
They can find me asleep.
Like shit. New God
the Architect. That's all you need to know.
There we go. Follow us on Facebook at Poppy Guys Attack. Subscribe to us on YouTube at PG Attack, or email us at pgattack@gmail.com. Any questions, comments, hypotheticals, or advice you would like to see addressed on the show. First, we'll get into our icebreakers, our coverage of and opinions on current events, moving into our main topic today being Victory Children. And it's going to be a pretty breezy show since we have the creators with us, so we wouldn't have to worry about any hypothetical this time. We'll just dive right in. Before we start, though, I do want to get into sort of our icebreaker for the day. You heard about the whole Ja Rule thing, right?
Fire media.
Come on, we left the kids on the island.
Fry Festival. Just before I explain the whole thing, what are your abstract thoughts about that?
I mean, you just gotta look into what you buying yourself into, man. I mean, I know there's a whole bunch of rich kids that got involved into that situation. So, me personally, I have no sympathy for it. But
I was reading about it earlier, and like I think it was earlier this morning. And this has been going on for a while. Like I said, I don't really check Twitter like that, but like it was a big thing on Twitter, and it leaked on the Instagram, which I'm more active on. So like I was like, what is this? And so I read about it, and the first thing I see is a picture of 50 Cent posting a picture of Ja Rule. And so like I was like, all right, so it's something to do with Ja Rule. And I look into it, it's like Ja Rule is a part of this this group of these rich elite who decide to throw this gathering, this big event. It's supposed to be like a festival, like a Lollapalooza or some shit like that. But unfortunately, it wasn't. I guess it wasn't real or something. I don't know what was happening, but people flew out there for like all this money, paying all these, all this money for this event, and then they got treated horribly. Like they thought it was like people throwing crates from back of trucks.
You have to actually back up. You have to back up. They were promised when they were going to go onto this island that they were going to get like 5-star quality meals. They were going to be treated in like some sort of luxurious like campsite. Yeah. And then when they actually arrived on the island, the food that they got were like cheese sandwiches and some lettuce.
That sounds like a day in the ghetto.
It was so funny. And like their campsite was like refugee camps from like, like,
yeah, right. I did hear that. It was like
we're Red Cross camp.
Right.
For me, it just felt like it was kind of like every like bad camp experience, but since they were rich people, it just felt like it was something like none of them could handle.
Well, I mean, all right, if you take a step back from that, for real, like I can't do that. Like me personally, I mean anybody else can, but me personally, I don't really like. I don't like saying, oh well, like they can get the shit because like they're rich, they can take it. I mean, I feel like nobody should get bamboozled, but at the same time, they did kind of deserve it. I feel they deserved it in a little bit for trying to go to this. I mean, have you seen the commercial for this?
Oh, God. I mean, I think they deserve it because they went this far to go watch Blink 182.
They did. They advertised Migos and DJ Khaled and some other people as well. So, I mean, they're popular artists. Adrian, did you see the video? Yeah.
Yeah, but I also know a little bit too. They were talking about it was a lot of technical shit they had to handle behind the scenes that was just disastrous for the management team as well. And so since Ja Rule's face was a part of it,
right?
Everybody tore him a new one for it. But it was really made in noble causes. They really wanted to put on something cool.
That's what I figured. It wasn't supposed to be like nothing, like no huge scam, but like basically, they said a follow-up article said that Ja Rule actually came to the venue himself, but he never actually got off his yacht. Like he stayed on the yacht and just like watched and like was like, yeah, this is so bad, and stayed. But he didn't like help or something. I don't know. But people really felt some type of way about that. So like, and because because he is like the biggest artist involved, he got hit with that $100 million lawsuit. And right. You have a lot of these rich kids with these, parents out there, it's horrible. Like he's about to get ripped a fresh new one by like so many like angry rich white parents.
God, there's nothing about this story that you can't enjoy. I'm sorry. This is just literally the funniest story of 2017.
Hipster sadness.
Oh my God. Like I kind of am a little bit upset by how much of this I'm enjoying, because there's just like everybody who I don't like being just more of those sort of people. And it seemed like karma finally came their way, but like they're still just acting like as the rich spoiled people.
You have an axe to grind with Ja Rule.
Oh, Ja Rule, nah. I mean, honestly, I'm sure the way most of these events usually get planned, the people who put their face in are not usually the ones that are planning all of this. I'm sure he didn't stand there with like organizers and flesh everything out. He was probably just more of a promoter. And
just pretty face. Speaking of which, some of the other pretty faces like Kendall Jenner, Bella Hadid, and some other models, they're getting a lot of shit on social media, and like I don't know, like I can't do that. I mean, like I said, I'm not judging you for it.
No. What we should have is they should fly down Kendall Jenner and hand everyone a Pepsi.
Everything would be better. Kendall Jenner and the Pepsi solves everything.
That would be justice.
And I've been laughing so much in the last couple of days, just following the updates of Fire. Like just disaster. I don't even know what else to call it. But like I want to hear new blood. I want to hear like what's going on in your creative minds.
Victory Children. Before we get into that, I just want to go a little bit further back in time to when I first met my man New God. And that's when I first got introduced to the series. For a lot of people who don't know, this has been worked on for way before I even met him. But at the time when I met the two creators, I was like, all right, cool. This is like a huge, sprawling, fleshed out story that's been constantly tinkered on. And I was very interested to see, where it would go, and flash forward to like now. I mean, we're in a place where these things have become possible for us to produce. I know Adrian's book is coming out first, and then your book is coming out next, isn't it?
Correct. Well, you're gonna get a couple more Adrian's books, but it's
couple
gonna
more.
Flesh out the story a little faster. Okay. You're gonna see and follow these characters as they dive into this world that you're about to see. That's gonna sprawl out in the coming books.
Can we break down? Well, I don't, without any spoilers per se, but can we sort of explain the project? Like, what is Victory Children? Like, where do you want to start with this?
So, in a nutshell, it's a universe that takes place in 2091. And it's sort of a place where we have done everything we've done to the world at this point, where Trump is president, and it wasn't so much about that, but the way that we flash forward is everything we're doing now leads into that.
Right.
All the sort of topics.
So would you consider it like a dystopia?
No, not exactly dystopian.
But
just think of everything you have now. Just think of everything you have now, but upgraded to not so much as a Guardians of Galaxy future, but urban,
like Looper, more urban, like, you know.
Absolutely.
It's more, it's advanced, but it's practical. Okay.
Right. Exactly.
So a practical future. I like that. All right. So in this future, this world that we're building, or that audiences will get to experience, what do you think that they might be interested in seeing from this world, and what do you have to offer?
I believe the biggest thing is relatable context to people's current emotional states. It's always been one of those things where, say we grew up in the 90s, right?
Right.
It would take place in the 2090s, but it's just a hyper-realized version of that. Because a lot of trends get recycled. Right, because a lot of our trends get recycled.
Exactly.
Okay.
Just with update to it, as you can see now, the trend is what? It's still late. It's like 80s still. They got the high top.
90s fashion. You got hairs with the cuts, and you know.
Go ropes.
I see like eras sort of like sound. So would you think like this has its own type of beat to it? Like, you know where the trend is at this time in that you're creating 2091.
Absolutely. As
so you sort of have your finger on the pulse of that era that you're creating.
Absolutely, in a way, and too, because you have to kind of look at our current time and look at that time and say, well, what are the things that we're going to carry over, and what are the things that we're going to leave behind? But more so, when you get into the whole aspect of, if you know, genetic engineering is starting to become a big thing.
Right and now. Body modification, things like that.
Exactly, body modification. So we take a lot of science fiction concepts, but sort of realize them in a practical space. So that's definitely another.
So what kind of story can we expect? Is it more like a Blade Runner, or is it more closer, like a sort of like a Logan or Old Man Logan story?
Almost like either, right?
Right.
This particular story is the first issue, and what everybody sees. Well, by the time this airs, it would have been after Free Comic Book Day. So the first 14 pages will be available. But what you're going to see is a story about family, really, about people wanting to be together. I think the entire series root is people wanting to be together.
Right.
The whole VCEU is Victory Children, them being united. The whole concept of the universe.
So what is the VCEU, just to explain things for our listeners?
After the Victory Children book is completed, there's, like New God was saying earlier, we've spread out into other characters. So that's the Victory Children extended universe, where we get into more real sort of Victory Children's akin to your mainstream one, but then we have more street level things, and then we get into supernatural things, and then we get into military things.
So you kind of want to cover all bases of this world,
in a way.
Okay.
Well, about these characters, I see right now you have a cast of 6.
Six children.
Can you tell me, I guess, their names and personality traits, because they seem pretty unique in terms of at least the aesthetic. What's their sort of background or profiles?
Our main
without spoilers, though.
Yeah, no, without spoilers. Just personalities, yeah.
This will all be out anyway. So our 6 main characters were raised in the facility that you see them in. And their names are numbers because their people have put products on them. They were manufactured there. They were born there.
Oh, nice.
There's no name for them, but they each have a unique, as you see, their looks are all different. They have unique personalities. And like I said, they want to be together. The whole thing is testing a metal. Mm-hmm. So each of their numbers is in a certain order, which is a spoiler. So I'll just let that go.
8, 7, 3, 5, 2, and
2, 5, 7, 1,
Yeah.
8,
Gotcha.
and 9. Yeah.
Yeah, 9. My buddy.
Wait, when you say these kids are like the product of experiments done without their own consent.
Well, they're actually products. They were born. To relate, and this is kind of fucked up, but I was watching Dr. Phil, and they raised these children. In this day and age, this is real life. They raised these children's. Wow. They raised these young little girls just to be prostitutes for them. These rich people. So it's not far out of the scope of things in 2091, where these people are bred for other things other than probably a sexual fetish for rich pedophiles. I mean, this is like the extreme of that. I'm guessing.
What's the use of these kids? Are they supposed to be weapons? Are they supposed to be just the new types of man? Like, is there any purpose for this whole experiment? Or is that something?
Page 3 is, I believe, if it's not there, but the doctor, he suspects that he was brought there to make biological weapons.
Right. Specifically today, I clicked on the Victory Children, the link, the new link, Holy Ground Neural Epics. I've seen some documents you printed from that. I'm like, okay.
So let me jump into that a little bit. So a few years ago, I met a lady, and she happened to be a neuro researcher.
Mm-hmm.
And she was just starting her company and everything, which is the Holy Ground Neuroethics. So I told her about my story, and then she was like, oh, that's cool. A few years later, she was like, oh, maybe I can help you because we are researching neurodegenerative disorders.
Oh, wow.
And she decided to help. And so we kind of, is it a sponsorship and endorsement? I wouldn't say. It's kind of a partnership between the two.
Damn.
And so for people who are interested in getting to know the process of the actual science behind this story.
It will be available in the actual story.
Right, from her Twitter, or I believe she has somebody managing the Twitter. And
wait, so can I ask you guys some other questions about the context and the creation of the story?
Yeah, go ahead.
I really like this whole concept of saying body modification because, generally in the scheme of things, the way science seems to be heading is more based on the external sort of graphs, like the virtual realities, not the augmented realities. Do you see within the next 10, 20, 30 years people, changing more of their body functionings based on technology? Or do you think that's just so far out because people are still scared?
This is happening. This is happening as we speak. Like Aaron said, the rich people, but there are designer children actually living among us that were grown in laboratories for specific purposes, whether it was to create certain genetic patterns or fighting diseases, whatever it might have been. CRISPR technology is one of the technologies I talk about in the story. It is actually last year in 2016, a European company, or Europe actually rolled back their restrictions on genetic experimentation using CRISPR technology. So that changes a lot of things. In the next 5 years, 10 years, we're going to have people who are, we're going to have people who are stopping certain genetic traits because they have the ability to do that to their children, preventing diseases or different color eyes, different color hair. Absolutely.
Wow. That's...
If any of you guys would be able to change one trait or create an artificial attribute, is there anything you guys would modify?
New God? No.
It would spoil something because it'd be something I created that I definitely want to use, but I don't want to say it.
You don't want to say it. Yeah, I understand.
So
I don't know, man. I have a very clear stance against these kind of things, just because.
For me, my body is sort of kind of like I wouldn't do it in real life, but like in sort of a hypothetical fashion, yeah, I would definitely go like along the lines of something like the Superior Spider-Man with the skin that's malleable. I would definitely like to interface with certain technological things to a certain level, but once you start doing that, then you lose your thoughts. Your thoughts become something that someone can search up, and that's not something I'm a fan of. There's a job right now. I can't remember what employer is doing this, but they're like implanting their employees with like these sort of implants that are kind of like trying to like, or instead of having like a swipe or something like that to get inside the building,
they can get into the building. Yeah,
certain things like that, and I think it's ridiculous, especially after that movie that came out by James Gunn. What was it called? The Belko experiment.
Because consider now what issues we have with privacy, right? So imagine then in a future where far down the line where we're not here, but our children or whoever's children are there, and it's normal for them to upload their thoughts. Like every minute they're spent connected to a server all day, and this is a possible future. This is a very real future.
I think it's sort of a strange future to have, but it's certainly a possibility. The way technology is going right now, I feel like a lot of things, especially virtual reality, have kind of taken over like our awareness of things because of smartphones and I don't want to call it a slippery slope, but it's basically a slippery slope of trying to make things easier at the expense of actually having skills to do things. Like we get rid of the manual labor and the skill of learning how to drive cars ourselves and creating these automatic cars, automatic food processors, etc. And we lose certain skills that we've tried to get for years before we actually gotten those skills ourselves. Personally,
it's scary. Those are all sort of things we touch on in as far as themes in the universe. It's like
right on a personal level. How do you think your characters will appeal to people?
I think like any team book, any book where there's a group of people, there's somebody that you can relate to. Like you'll know somebody. Like I know somebody who acts like that. I know my younger brother or my younger sister behaves like that. So
they're more based on people.
Yeah, absolutely. Every character is based on some aspect of someone I know or some situational aspect. Even then, down to their powers are connected. We didn't even talk about powers.
The same we've powers, but like to be clear, when we speak about modifications, I don't want to. It's not spoiling anything, but
okay.
What you're looking at, they are not modifications. Those children,
they were born this way.
Right.
Correct.
I like how in something like Jessica Jones, how there's sort of a theme of trauma, right?
Right.
Every character in the show has some form of trauma. So you think in this show there's like an overarching theme that runs through sort of like the back narrative of what you're working on?
I believe it is. But I mean, because as far as the kids, you gotta understand that facility is all they know. Everything.
Right.
So coming outside of that facility is going to be a culture shock to the highest level into a future where it's not only new for the reader, but it's for the characters as well.
So we get to explain away the world while they experience it with us, the reader.
Exactly.
So yeah, I can see how we can see through their eyes, especially if they're relatable to people that that we already know and can relate to.
That's right.
And it's situational based too, for instance, the beginning, 9 is he's got to go to the bathroom and he wants to get the hell out of there, and he's just like dude, he's gonna march towards the door. Dude. We all know somebody who's kind of gonna, I'm out of here. I don't know what the fuck y'all talking about, but I'm out.
Before a project ever gets started, there's always like 1,000 ideas thrown at the wall, and then usually through the process of like hashing it out in real life or working through like what can or can't be done, you realize that a lot of your initial ideas get trashed in the process, and some of the other things that you were thinking about just never get realized. So
that's sort of a good segue into asking about the artists. You want to talk about your relationship with Miguel?
Absolutely. So to answer Eli's question, we have a Bible, sort of. There are some things that didn't make the cut in the book for this one, but it was more so little idiosyncrasies with the characters and how they functioned, and everything that's getting laid out is... Every idea that we have is going to make it into the series somehow.
So how did it translate between that and sort of working with Miguel?
He taught me how to write comics. No, real rap. Because I was like, oh, I know how to do this. I've been practicing scripts since we all know each other for about a few years now. So I've been writing scripts this entire time, but when you're actually working with an artist and he hands you back a piece of artwork and you're looking at what you wrote, you realize there are some things you don't have, or there are some emotions you're not portraying correctly. And then since there's a language barrier between me and Miguel, since he lives in Spain.
That's Miguel Angel Ruiz.
Yeah, he's worked on some stuff for Avatar Press. He's worked on a bunch of indie stuff. He's a teacher. He does it all, man. He's really like Michelangelo out there in Spain. He's like painting chapels, and he's really out there.
It's really good. So, I mean, that's sort of what I mean. Like, was it hard, like working with like just like the language barrier and having to get over that? I mean, I think the internet makes it quite easier than it would if this was a different time. A lot of my work with some of my clients, and also between you and I, we figure a lot of things out together through collaboration that maybe, like Eli was saying, maybe we didn't realize was a problem until actual execution of that. And with the language barrier and then still getting that across, that's like a huge feat of accomplishment.
Absolutely. Because he's not a native English speaker, not even that. I'm going to say, I think it's because of his language that comics, his mastery of the language, or my language, learning the language of comics, the images that we were able to produce, his mind seeing my script, even if he didn't understand the English too well, he was able to reproduce things exactly how I saw them, and even in a better way that he saw it, because he'll send me something back and I'll look over the script and be like, this isn't what I wrote down. It will be, but
it sort of fills in the sort of a gap. Exactly.
He's like, no, you have to trust me because of the visual language. I don't know. I just stopped questioning him after a while. I'm like, okay, yeah, you have to learn. For any creators, they just have to learn to trust their artists too. They have to trust their team. Like when we work together on things, you got to kind of let things go once it's with the other person.
Exactly.
Did you hit any like brick walls while you guys were working together?
Let me see. Yeah, there was once where we were working on a double page spread, and it's trying to figure out, because I had inserted no double page spreads. And when you get to a certain point in the book or in writing something and working with another person, they will they'll sort of veer off because of other things they do. It's another person. Their life or something might get in the way. So he's looking at the script and he sends his double page back to me, and I'm like, I made a mistake in not writing something into it. I made a mistake here. And he's like, well, what do you want me to change it? I thought he was pissed at me because he was like, do you want me to change it? I already did it, and it's in the thing. And I'm like,
yeah.
And you can't, it was like a brick wall. You kind of smash. You're going so fast and everything's going so smoothly, and then it's just like, boom, you can't do this way. So we get into a little bit of a tiff there, but again, it's just putting trust in the artist's visual language, his response.
I don't even see them as brick walls. I think a brick wall means you're just gonna stop, and I think if you hit a brick wall, you don't come back. This is more like hitting the mattress, and sometimes when you make your bed, you gotta lay in it.
Absolutely. But as far as the story is concerned, too, what I learned is that you can't be too hands-on. Like, you can't wrap your fingers around its neck, and you gotta let it breathe. One of the things that this whole thing taught me so much, and I feel like I'm able to grow with those children in the story, because seeing them for the first time is like a kid being born, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You might not.
Especially since you gestated on, both of you gestated on these characters for a long time, and then finally getting to see them realize in a physical state. I think that's sort of like birth for a writer.
You did mention, though, you said that you made a lot of scripts before, and coming into this project, you were confident that you could have made a comic script, and only after you finished this, you realized how to make a comic book script. Now that you're actually done with at least the first leg of this project, how do you now see yourself writing comic book scripts as opposed to previous scripts? Like, what's your new found appreciation and perception of comic book scripts as opposed to other mediums?
For me, I talk a lot about extended media and how to pull as much as you can out of one moment. And so before when I wrote comic books, I kind of just had the film frame by frame in my head.
Right.
But now I get to look at each panel and tell a story within a panel, down to things that are emotionally relevant to whatever the character is doing. I learned more about why things are close up in comics. I've learned more about why things are far away in comics, and why certain panels are larger, or why characters move a certain way because of their emotions, and to better display that. So the entire process, versus it being just me writing something down, is now more me putting down emotions and putting down, if that makes any sense, I'm putting down.
Yeah.
It's a deeper language. There's more words being said in that image. And not to be so serious on it, too. I tended to not be, panel 1, panel 2, panel 3, panel 4. But now I can kind of stand back and look at the entire scene and say, okay, this is how much fits on a page. This is how much I can fit on 2 pages. Especially with Miguel, he's got some panels. We've been instructed not to put more than, 6 panels to a page?
Right.
He's got ways to put panels on pages that I've never even thought of.
New God. So what are you planning for your book? Like, do you have an artist lined up, or are you still using Miguel?
That's something that is on the talks on the table with use Miguel. I don't know. I'm just looking, but I might wing with Miguel just because we keep the tone of the book, the same artist, just keep the same feel, same universe,
Right. It's easier to lead people in.
Right.
It might be different colors. You're sitting down and you get to open up the book for the first time, and when you're going through it, the first set of pages that I put out are supposed to feel like one complete chapter. And you get this journey of, it's in medias res, New God was telling me, like, oh, it's like a movie.
Starting in the middle. Is there any huge differences between like book 1 and book 2, or?
Each book is so we talked about world building and things like that. So there's chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3 for this first sort of arc is inside the lab, and then they get out.
Yeah, the numbers experience the world for the first time outside of this facility.
Right. And then they go into the city, the nearby city, and they discover the slums first of the city. And so each book has a different theme, and the first book's theme is the one of all, or the sacrifice of one for all. The second book's theme is duality, and then the final book is the tetrad, or the triangle.
Okay, so it's a trilogy.
Yeah.
How would you say your series defines itself as a distinguished series from a lot of this sort of genre? Because I've in the past read other sort of series where kids were the experiments of unwanted projects, kids were the experiments of some sort of either scientific project gone wrong, or some sort of right. I mean, there's a show called Fringe that was around a while ago, which had the same premise, and this is something
100.
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, like
there's a lot of genre shows for this.
I think that the appeal of this sort of story is that it takes people or children who should be innocent. I think Gunslinger Girl is another. It's an anime with the same sort of concept, which takes like children or babies who should be innocent and empower them with these sort of weapons. I think Elfen Lied, also had the same sort of idea. Mm-hmm. So what do you think about your series makes or separates or set you guys apart from, or at least what a lot of the rest of these stories are telling?
I could say this, that one, there's no good or bad guys. Any of those series you just named, you always have a defined good guy and a defined bad guy.
So there's no there's no Mr. Claw in the background laughing, because there's a character that I've become quite attached to. It's the bald black guy. And then he really looks like a Lex Luthor type man. I don't like his shady look, and so like I'm thinking he might be a bad guy. So
that's one of the defining things is why people like The Walking Dead, why people like these other series that are gaining this traction, is because these characters are able to be bent and twisted. There's no Superman who is going to step in and save the day. Somebody's always being questioned on their morality. Somebody's always being questioned on the thing that they just put faith in this one thing, and they thought they had it all figured out.
The scumbag complex. You get to be a scumbag, but you also save the day. But no, you're a scumbag. Everybody's a scumbag. It's the law of the universe.
You could put it that way, but I think too in stories you just ask questions, and every sort of character among the 6 of them, for me personally, is asking a specific question, and that comes down to their actions and what they decide to become as experiencing the world that they're about to enter.
But I think also, I think you make a really good point and a really good bid in terms of creating characters. But I think when you start off a story where kids become victims, it almost translates into them being absolved from the guilt of their actions, because immediately as a reader, you tend to find sympathy with what they're doing, because you say I think the direction they might go in, I think they might shock you from that by the actions that they will commit out into the real world. Because even if I'm just predicting here. It might not even happen, but I remember in Blade Runner,
and some other things, they kind of let you know that, like, even though this thing, a child that you consider to be innocent or whatever, they could still, commit quote unquote a sin out in the real world, and they don't know the difference. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
I wouldn't
But
say
I'm
they
saying like this. I
absolved
don't want
from
to
it.
say they're victims. I don't want to say they are victims because who's to say that their stay at the facility was good? Was good. You know what I'm saying? Maybe it could have been good.
You can only judge them based off what they do, and not really like consider them innocent until they prove that they are.
Right, exactly. It's a case of, once you know something, you're responsible. And it's sort of that vein of Silver Age comics. That's what really was a big defining part for me going into putting this iteration of the story together. Was I went and I said, well, what made Silver Age comics, the heavily science fiction comics of the 1940s during the Cold War era, so interesting, or the 60s, my bad. During the 60s and 70s, so interesting. It was when you're looking at these heavily scientific and whimsical scenarios, you can often lose the fact that these are people behind the mask. It's one of the things that makes Peter Parker Spider-Man in issue 1 such a thought piece for people, because at the end he had to confront the fact that his naivety got his uncle killed. His pride got his uncle killed. And so each of these, for everybody, I wanted to sort of put them in a situation, the characters, for the readers to put themselves in the situation with one of them, or if not all of them. You can take them as a group and what that means, what that implies together, but you also individually can examine them and say, well, this is what this character might be about, or this is what this character's motivations might be, or this is how this character is feeling. Another thing that I think is missing from mainstream comics is the emotions in the face. One of the things I love about Miguel's art is his character is yeah, you know what emotions they're feeling at any given time, and that's a very big. The artwork, this is one of those things that I feel like you have to keep reading in order to understand what's continuously going on. Because you'll find new things inside the panel work that might trip off certain moments that you have to come back to. And like, oh, I didn't see that. I didn't know that character. Or I could tell that character behaved that way because...
Right now, they're in this sort of environment where they're in these hospital gowns and things like that. But when they get out in the world, they'll start to... sort of grow into the people that they were supposed to be in the first place.
Is it who they were supposed to be?
Conflict itself right now is still a mystery. I mean,
exactly what you see in page 1 is going to be what they're dealing with throughout the arc.
The black guy.
Yeah.
The bald black guy. See, I knew it. I knew there was a laughing black guy. I mean
But he's not in the background like,
yeah, I know, but I'm sure there's several moments where you question, all right, maybe this dude is really onto something. Maybe he's actually doing the right thing.
The things that we should be paying attention to are going to be not presented in a basic sort of, oh, here's some music or here's some. So, like I said, I was dealing with that other company, Holy Crown Neuroethics.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the rollout stuff is going to come out through them, and it's going to kind of tie into sort of charity work. And
yeah, I did see the thing about ALS Awareness Month.
Yeah.
So there's sort of a tie-in there.
It's going to be really neat. I don't want to, because of...
I remember when I first met New God, and he was like, he posed that limitless question to me. You know, we only use blah 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 % of our brains. What if we can use?
By the way, you do know that's a myth, right?
I was just about to say, so if I addressed that in the story, because all right, here's one of the things that definitely changed. That was the original premise 10 years ago. You could only use 10%, blah 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 blah. But you find out things are kind of fake news.
Right.
And then I addressed that in the whole story. Actually, the reason being is the brain is a fundamental part of how things function for everybody in this universe, or how we function in general. It's very psychology driven, but not to a point where you're going to be like, oh shit, I don't understand the psychobabble.
Yeah.
It's very driven in psychology. So they find out, or as you find out in the first document page, that the disease has nothing to do with 99 or a certain percentage, but it does have to do with a certain ratio that their brain is being rewritten.
Right.
So it's a case of modification again, where the brain is changing itself.
Which work has influenced the progression of the storyline? Has there been any creators in terms of writers or artists that have given you inspiration towards how you want to, lay out not just the story, but your approach and overall comic story?
Katsuhiro Otomo, the creator of Akira, is definitely one of my influences for this. Grant Morrison plays a small role in this one. He has more of a role in the other story. But Lord of the Flies is definitely another inspiration for the story.
Damn.
Recently,
it's a good way to pitch this story. It's like Lord of the Flies right there on the back of the book. It's like
Lord of the Flies meets.
It's like Lord of the Flies, but it's Akira though. Like
I know, and then you should have like
sentence on the back.
Yeah, get the quote attributed to Grant Morrison.
Get the quote attributed to me because I said that.
No. You should have it like attributed to Grant Morrison, and then have that attributed to you.
Then I'll have that whole statement attributed to you saying I said that Grant Morrison said that it's like Lord of the Flies, but it's
Akira.
Yeah.
Honestly, I would want to read much more of the story and see where it goes than to keep asking. Because right now I'm interested to see how everything plays out. I'm interested to see where this universe develops. I want to see how these characters develop. It seems like a fresh take on an old concept. And what I always think is what sells these stories is the relevancy of the social causes. So whenever we talk about things like eugenics or people being tested on, and you bring that back to today's world, that's really not just like selling your story, but like telling the readers that this isn't just something that's on a page. This is something that's going on in real life. And those are the sort of stories that I think that hold true to the medium and hold true to at least the narrative of fiction. So I'm interested to see how everything plays out.
These are okay. So the documents attached are the documents from the actual factuals.
Yeah, there's
like the really McReals. Like you didn't sit down and type this yourself. That makes this project a lot more sexier because like, and you gotta let people know that because like, I mean we discussed it, but like just sitting here and seeing it like.
And these I kind of had to really dig for, but and get clearance for them. The neuroscientists that are talking to her.
Does Miguel do his own colors, or who does the colors?
No, so we have a colorist. I don't know if he's in the Philippines or Malaysia, but his name is Eugene or Eugene Bativa, something like that. Mm-hmm. Miguel was the one who. Because we did auditions for colors last year, a year and a half ago, and Miguel was the one that was instrumental in helping me pick that guy. It was, again, just me leaving my trust in Miguel, and we got something unique.
Are these going to be physical or digital?
Both. Well, for Free Comic Book Day, it's going to be a digital. The plan is... pulling up digital and then compiling the whole thing for everybody in physicals. And people who sign up on the website will have access to the first dibs on anything we get as far as special content or physical copies.
Yeah, I'm definitely willing to get myself one of these physical copies. Do you remember Push?
Yeah.
At the beginning of Push, they did something similar. They took a lot of old Nazi and old Cold War documents and sort of made them sort of explain away that, yes, this is sort of a fictional tale, but, you know, it can exist in this world that where these things have already existed and already have manifested in certain ways. So it's great that you have gone out and made it possible to get certain information to sort of say, hey, you know, this is far-fetched, but it's not that far-fetched. We definitely have sort of like a fire starter vibe from from these documents.
As far as what conduit we're getting with the children, there is something that's being told here. They say art reflects life, I guess. But there's this sort of, I don't want to say a cry for help, but almost like a, hey, pay attention to this because these things are going to be in your face in the next 10 years.
Before you realize it.
Exactly.
If you can have any of these characters cross over universes with characters of another universe, which characters would you want them to engage with?
Blade. I'll definitely love to work with, like, do Blade or Black Panther if I was to do Marvel crossover. But I can't tell you what character they'd rather work with because that was for what I'm doing.
Well, I already know what type of crossover I would do if I was taking one of these characters into another world. I would take number 9 and send him on the just a one-shot beat with Damian Wayne.
Oh my god! What? That would be awesome.
Just little Damian, you know, picking him up in the Batmobile and just saying, you know, you got some things to learn, kid. And like just like being an asshole and just realizing sometimes there's people out there more powerful than you who you can influence in a weird way.
DC, can we make that happen?
Yeah. But what about you, Adrian?
I kind of have the same sort of vibe with DC Universe, and the closest thing would probably be the DC Universe, but specifically,
I feel like they were fitting in Wildstorm a little bit.
A little bit more, yeah, the whole Gen 13 and stuff like that. I couldn't really say, I don't know, because there's so much opportunity. Like, I couldn't really put like, oh, here's number 9 and here's Superman chilling or Batman. Or Marvel, for that matter, because Marvel would get their...
Nah, I can't see it too bombastic. I feel like Marvel would turn them into legacy characters. You would see like
real fast.
You see like number 1 wearing like a Iron Maiden suit or something like that. What else are you planning in this universe, in this this weird 2091 type world? Like,
what is science? What does science mean? What does religion mean? What does spirituality mean? What does government mean?
Are you going to...
It's very interesting because each of these things bleeds off of itself into the next property. So the children lead into an explanation, or you see the effects of the children's escape on the city in another book. And then you see a little bit of the government situation and how they handle the world government and how they handle those things.
Will you be passing it off between the two of you, or are there any other writers that you have in mind to come inside this universe?
It's me and him, and then I know me specifically, I want to bring in more people. I don't want to necessarily write all this ourselves. But
So So hypothetically, if someone
Hypothetically,
say like Dan Slott was like, "Oh yeah, I liked your book. I think I can write a story within this universe about somebody."
Dan's a lot of Canadian.
Dan Slott. I'm just dying off of that because so many people hate Dan Slott on Spider-Man. And I'm like, what would Dan Slott do? What the hell would he do? A lot of independent voices. I want to pretty much bring people in who have the same sort of questions to ask in the narrative. To sort of look at their world and say, what does this mean? What does this really mean? What does politics mean? You know what I mean? What are the structures of the things that we've created for ourselves? By now, you can just go to victorychildren.org and there should be a listing there for your email address. There'll also be a link to upcoming Comixology. If you have an Amazon account, if you have a Comixology account, you'll be able to find there. I'm kind of considering a PDF version too. Mm-hmm. So if you're listening to this, it will be there. If I decide to put it there, it will be there. This is Days of Future Past.
And if you're confused about anything, don't hesitate to email me or Adrian about anything. I'll definitely help you get in contact with or get the answer to any question that you would like to ask. He'll probably be on most of these shows, so he'll always be available to answer your questions.
And once you get the thing in your hands, try to make it as not confusing as possible. I want everybody to kind of take what they get, not to say it spitefully, but take what you're looking at and read it for what it is and figure out whether or not you want to continue it. I mean, it's free, so.
It's like Lord of the Flies, but Akira, like.
And Grant Morrison.
And Grant Morrison's crazy ass, absolutely.
And that was Basic Control, the show where we effectively break down various forms of media into relatable context, basically giving the control back to the viewers. My name is Aaron Ray, aka the Boss Rayden on social media. Feel free to follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and ArtStation. As for my co-hosts, Eli, people can probably find you sleeping
or eating. I can eat as well, so I might
Adrian, I think that you can always find him at the Signs
with the Y.
Anywhere with a Y, anywhere on social media. And New God, well, good luck finding him. He'll find you. You can find us at Facebook at Poppy Guys. Subscribe to us at YouTube at PG Attack or email us at pgattack@gmail.com. Any questions, comments, hypotheticals, or advice you would like to see addressed on the show. Thank you for just coming in and explaining your project. I really appreciate your time, Eli. And that would be the show.
Yeah, peace and love, guys. Be good to each other.
Love you, Eli. Bye. No, I really hate self-promotion. So it's kind of like, somebody wants to talk about my thing. Oh, that's cool.